So today I'm going to talk about the legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon. There's a lot of evidence that gardens were a big part of Mesopotamian life, especially for kings and royalty. The most famous of these were supposedly the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, believed in antiquity to be one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. In fact, classical Greek authors couldn't seem to stop marveling about them. Strabo, Diodorus Siculus, and Philo of Byzantium were all fascinated by these gardens, though it seems that none of them actually saw them. It's probably the Babylonian writer who wrote in Greek named Berosus who told the most famous story of the creation of the Hanging Gardens and its stated purpose. He writes that King Nebuchadnezzar, and I quote, "After he had walled the city in notable fashion and adorned its gates in a manner befitting a holy place, he built another palace next to the palace of his father. It would perhaps be tedious to describe the height and the rest of the richness of this palace. Despite its extraordinary size and splendor, however, it was completed in 15 days. In this palace he built and arranged the so-called Hanging Garden by setting up high stone terraces which he made appear very similar to mountains planted with all types of trees. He did this because his wife, who had been raised in Media, longed for mountainous surroundings." So Nebuchadnezzar II's wife was Queen Amytis, who was actually a Median princess. Sounds like a really romantic story. Berosus' description is believed by historians to be the most reliable depiction of this wonder. Curiously though, the more that one goes back towards the time when the gardens were supposedly built, probably in the late 590s BCE, the less we actually hear about them. In fact, Herodotus, who in the 5th century BCE traveled extensively through what was then the Persian Empire, of which Babylon was one of its principal cities, never actually mentioned the gardens. Nor are there any Babylonian sources that explicitly mention the existence of such a structure. This is actually really odd, because if we know anything about the Babylonians, it's that they were experts at preserving historical records. Even Nebuchadnezzar II, who put his name on many building projects that he commissioned, including the famous Ishtar Gate, never mentioned the Hanging Gardens. That's strange because if it was really as grand as we've been led to believe, surely he would have said something about it. Due to any lack of real records from the time or substantial archaeological evidence, many scholars consider the tales written down by Hellenistic authors to be just that, tales or stories. Of course, maybe Greek and later writers just got the name wrong. According to David Wiseman, the late biblical scholar, archaeologist and Assyriologist at the University of London, there is evidence of the gardens from an inscription found on a cylinder purported to be written by the scribes of Nebuchadnezzar. It reads that the king commissioned a building of, and I quote, "baked bricks into the likeness of a mountain and built a large step terrace structure as a royal abode, high up between the double walls of Babylon." End of quote. It is this structure that he implies could have been the northern part of the city that up until now has not been excavated. This is definitely a possibility. However, without further excavation of the area, which at the moment is extremely dangerous given the political situation and lack of security in Iraq, the definitive proof that the Hanging Gardens existed will still continue to remain a mystery. Thanks for stopping by. For more little tidbits on history, make sure you subscribe. Until next time, keep the world safe for rock and roll.